Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low-budget show. It's the show so low, it has no budget. We're doing it. I have to do this episode. It's been on my mind for years and forever. I have to talk about Janet Van Dyne. She's a character that matters to me more than most, so I have to do it. It's time. We're coming close to her movie again. We're going to do it. It's the Janet Van Dyne episode. That's what we're calling it. But before that, we have to talk about the news, which kind of sucks this week because there's so much shit we have to talk about. Oh my goodness. I guess for starters, we still haven't gotten any news from James Gunn about like the new slate of DC stuff. He said it was January. The day I'm recording this, there is only 2 days until the end of January, so he's probably going to save it for the last day to be like, oh, by the way, we're starting with the question or something. That'd be awesome. The question's cool. I just love things. Excited. Really cool. But we actually have some really shitty news to talk about up front. So I'm going to break this down into two separate categories, I think. But they're kind of in the same vein of men of a certain stature using their influence to say stupid shit and do stupid shit. So first piece of news, I hate we have to talk about this, but it actually very much impacts a lot of pop culture. Justin Roiland, the voice of Rick and Morty, the man in Solar Opposites, he helped produce Koala Man. He just had his game come out called High on Life. All of those companies, Adult Swim, Hulu, and Squanch Games, have all parted ways with him for, you know the case, the domestic abuse charges and all that stuff. And then just a lot of his DMs being leaked, and you just see that, oh, this guy's probably the piece of shit we all know. I'm not going to talk ill of anybody involved. I just think it's amazing this didn't happen sooner because the guy gives off the biggest creep energy you've ever seen. He seems very entitled, if that makes sense, like a guy who is above it all. It's this kind of energy that I think harms pop culture and everything, and having him act that way and behave that way really sucks that he had such an influence over what pop culture became. I know there's people, I'll say, actually, I say this, I know he's not like really involved in the writer's room at Rick and Morty. I doubt he's involved in the writer's room at like Solar Opposites or anything like that. But you can feel the distinctive shift between his involvement in those properties and him not being involved in those properties. But it's just very interesting how that came down. So he will no longer be voicing Rick and Morty. He's probably, I'm going to assume he's no longer going to be the voice of his character in Solar Opposites. I'm going to assume they won't bring back his character for Koala Man. I'm going to assume his career is over and he's going to be Armie Hammered overseas somewhere to do some stupid shit. It sucks, but I would rather this happen than we carry on knowing the bullshit with him. So I'm very much okay with doing a Rick and Morty recast. I don't think that's a problem. If it were up to me, you don't bring it up once, and every season or even every episode, they just have a new voice actor doing it. I don't think they need to sound anything like Roiland's impersonations. They shouldn't. Completely new voice, it would work just fine. And then you see if your audience is actually interested in the show for its writing or for the clever satire bullshit that Roiland supposedly brings to the table. That is what you would find here. He's a piece of shit and we hate him, and I don't really want to dwell on it any longer, so it's good that he's not longer involved in any of these. They're probably all going to go downhill because it's just hard to replace that, but you can pivot and shift, do something strong. So hopefully we come out stronger for it because of that. And moving on from there, I was just going to talk about the Shazam trailer, but the day I was going to sit down to record this and something came up, some news or some information from a Mr. Zachary Levi broke. So cool. We're going to actually change this segment from look at the Shazam trailer, it kind of looks okay, to, oh look, another DCEU actor said something stupid before their movie came out. Oh my god. Okay, again, never the biggest Levi fan. I don't think his Billy Batson plays off the way Asher is presenting it. Like, they give two different performances where it doesn't feel like the same character. I think that's solely because of what Levi is doing is more comedic than what Asher is doing. That aside, never like cared about his work that much. but I understand his importance to pop culture. But he said some stupid shit. People were doubling down on his stupid shit and reporting things that he said. So, dude, you were 2 months away from your movie being released. All you had to do was promote it and shut up. But you said something dumb. And I know his dad is sick, so I don't want to, shit on the guy too much. But I'm just like, you're so close to the finish line. No way you're coming back for the third or reboot now. No way. I don't see it happening. Insane. Oh, dude, we were so close. And it's weird because I don't know anybody who's actively like, yeah, Shazam. Or I don't think I know anybody in the real world who knows Shazam is coming out. Everybody I know that knows about that movie is either online or like me and is way too invested in all this crap. So I get that, I guess. Very weird. Very weird. Moving away from there, we do have some more DC news to talk about, actually. It came out and was confirmed that... it's kind of sad to say, but Doom Patrol and Titans will be coming to their natural conclusions this season. We all saw it coming. The writing was on the wall when Stargirl was let go and everything else is kind of just leaving slowly. These two kind of felt like the last holdout, but the fact that they're getting their natural conclusion feels good because this entire season of Doom Patrol has been about losing their immortality, so I feel like the show's going to end with them realizing now they have to seize their opportunities and actually just learn to love without the fear of just losing the ones you love. It's kind of interesting. That's going to be really fun to see. Doom Patrol's been really good this season. I'm going to do an entire podcast episode talking about that show when it's done because I don't think we're going to see the likes of anything in that regard ever again. I really don't think we're going to see a Doom Patrol-esque show ever again because it's that brilliant and that strong. I mean that. I mean that completely. I don't think we can do it again. Titans is not a show I'm a big fan of, but I still feel like we're going to try Titans again. They just got a relaunch in the comic books from Tom Taylor. I feel like we're going to try that again. But I don't know if we'll ever do a big Doom Patrol show like this again. It's amazing. It made it that long. Those things kind of suck. But I guess bigger and better things are upon us. I say that loosely, knowing probably not for those characters. Whatever. Here's a question I do want to throw out to the audience, though. Do you think the new DC Universe movies should have Dick Grayson be 10 years old or 18? Now, I'm not saying he's Robin and becomes Nightwing, but where do we start with the legacy generation? Because those are a big part of DC, and they have more of them than Marvel. So I understand, okay, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Diana, they have to start off in their 20s, but does Bruce have a Dick Grayson who's 10 years old, and we let the actor mature until we get 8 years in, and then he becomes a Nightwing? Very interesting. Who knows? Kind of cool. Sad they're leaving, but you get it. So moving away from there, we also have some casting news because Ayo Edebiri, who is doing amazing in The Bear, she is so good in that show. She also wrote one of the really fun episodes this season of What We Do in the Shadows. She has been cast in Thunderbolts. Now, for an undisclosed role, one can only imagine it's going to be... I actually don't know. I was trying to think of... Would it be Screaming Mimi? Would we have her be Screaming Mimi? I would love that. I think that would be really cool. I don't know if they'd go that way. Maybe Moonstone, but she was rumored to be in the Marvels movie, but I don't know. She's a great actor. And yeah, girl, make your money. Go into this universe, get the credit for this world, and then jump over and make your own shit again. I feel like she's a really talented creative who's going to do something to that extent. So I'm all for it. I am here for it. I cannot wait to see how that's going to go. Talented young woman, what do you got for me? What are you going to do? Probably something fun. I do like that a lot. I think that's going to be really enjoyable. And going from that to the next piece of news, we have a little bit of video game information in terms of the big screen or the small screen, depending on how you look at it. 3 episodes into The Last of Us, the numbers keep rising and rising and rising. The episode that is premiering today is the Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett episode, which looks pretty cool. I think it's going to be a good one. Everyone's kind of yeah, this is going to be fun. Prepare yourselves. I love both those actors, so that's going to be really cool. But hey, Season 2 is coming. Yep, we're going to do Season 2. And the showrunner just said we might expand it even more because there's so much to talk about in that show, in that video game of Part 2 that we could expand that world and maybe do another season. which leads me to believe you're scared to lose Pedro because maybe he's the reason people are watching your show. But nah, man, that's awesome. It was bound to happen. This feels like it's one of the biggest success stories to come out of that generation of like content for video games. It feels like this is going to be the template going forward, which we'll talk about a little bit in the next news piece, that more video games can be like, oh yeah, we're going to do long series formatted stuff now. Don't be surprised if God of War gets this announcement, if Gears of War gets this announcement, if Mass Effect gets this announcement. I feel like they're doing better than Halo did, you know? And I didn't hate the Halo show, I just thought it was whatever. But this is, I think, how you do it. This is how you'd win that case, how you'd save that story. This makes sense to me. Great idea. We'll talk about the show when it's all wrapped up here, but I just gotta say, I enjoy it. It's a very well-made show. There's something strong about The Last of Us, and we'll talk about that when the show is all done. And our final piece of news to talk about is in conjunction to this video game stuff, but it's over at Amazon this time because Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she just announced like another project she was doing, which is like a weird based off a book science fiction-y thing, kind of, you know. She's also going to be working on the new Tomb Raider series, and they're going to expand that world. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's cool. I've always liked a good Tomb Raider attempt. I feel like that's an easy one to translate because she is way cooler than Nathan Drake, but I still like Nathan Drake. It's like, okay, cool. Is she going to be Laura? I doubt it. I think she's moved away from that. Is going to do like more behind the scenes producing work, which again, she is a good talent on and off screen. So I am 100% on board to see what she's going to create. Tomb Raider, fun series. Okay, see what you got for me. Have we stripped every comic book that we have to do video games now? What's going to be next? And this is going to be, I want to do this in another video too. So I'm going to actually write this down. What are we doing after comic book movies? I'm writing it down. What are we doing after comic book movies? What is going to be like the next thing we do? Because we're clearly headed towards video games. I could, like, what's another thing? I guess like redoing like all those 80 cartoons. You know, like maybe a new, well, we tried G.I. Joe all the time, but maybe like what are the biker mice from outer space, or like the like those types of things, like those characters who are like, you know, just nostalgic toys of that era kind of thing. And that's probably what we're going to see happen there, but it's okay. Cool. Or we'll go back and do like Dick Tracy in the Shadow and all that shit. I want more Dick Tracy. We're talking Tomb Raider. Doesn't matter. This sounds fun. Very excited to see what that's going to be. Is she still attached to that Mr. and Mrs. Smith series that was going to have Donald Glover? I know he stepped away to do Hypno Hustler, supposedly, so cool. Oh, boy. Content forever, as they say. Content forever. But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're doing the Janet Van Dyne episode. Okay, where to start with this episode? I've kind of set it up a couple of weeks ago when the new Wasp #1 came out, Al Ewing's new book to celebrate 60 years of Janet Van Dyne. I said a lot about the character in that video already. I kind of teased that I wanted to do a bigger video just talking about Janet in a larger world and like how her cultural impact has become, the things that have shaped her as a character, what she has done, where she has gone, how come she's so isolated in certain aspects of things. It's so fascinating to me. Now, I'm hesitating to find the right way to start this because not only do I have so much I kind of want to get into, but I have so much reverence for this character, and I guess more than that, for her era of creation. There is something about like this era of Marvel Comics women, and by this era, I mean the Lee and Kirby era, where there is this clear direction from one of the men in particular, well, maybe both. I don't want to shit on either of them, because I do have a favorite of the Lee and Kirby, and I don't want to say what is what, but definitely in terms of the writing, put it that way, there was this certain way the characters that were women were written, you know? Not just Janet, but Sue Storm was one of them. She was a victim of this as well. Jean Grey was a victim of this as well. Betty Ross was a victim of this as well. They just were written like a man who had no idea women have personalities. And when you do that, it's like, okay, that sucks. And I could talk about it more with Sue in another video. The thing with Susan, though, is she has more history than Janet, where you can see like writers actually caring about her and trying to do stuff with her and experimenting with her and very interested in her history and trying new things and experimenting. And then when it comes to the stuff with Janet, she never escapes the abuse of being abused. And not just, we'll get into like the actual thing that I know a lot of people know her for, but she is just kind of just always sidelined in every iteration. And it sucks. And it's not cool because of that. I don't understand it. The thing is, like, a lot of it in the modern context of why Janet has been sidelined has to do with the films pushing Hope Van Dyne, a character who exists in the movie because Edgar Wright's original script was like, we're having the 70s, 60s free-spirited, you know, Hank and Janet exist there, and the current generation in like the 2000s when the script was being tossed around does have, you know, Scott Lang. So that being that, I understand how they kind of just worked around that. But the thing is, and okay, we'll talk about this right now before we kind of like get into the like the more comic book stuff and the larger impact of the character. The stuff with the movie version of the Wasp, and this is a thing I have been saying for a long time because I'm such a fan of Janet Van Dyne. The thing I have been saying for such a long time with the movies is that it stripped every originality that any version of the Wasp could have, whether it was Hope or Janet, and made them these characters intrinsically connected to like one event that happens, Hope with her mother's disappearance, hating her father, and Janet to being connected to the quantum realm, that now these characters never feel fleshed out. They feel like accessories and pieces of just like extensions of the Scott and of the Hank character as opposed to their real characters themselves. Now, you start off with one Ant-Man movie, I get that, you introduce them. But then it's also just like, okay, now Hope gets to become the hero, the Wasp, and she doesn't get to have her own cadre of villains. They're either connected to Scott, or they're connected to her dad, or her mom, so she doesn't get to do anything. And she's not on the actual Avengers team, and she doesn't hang out with the actual Avengers characters. And then she just gets denigrated to being Evangeline Lilly, who is her own issue. I don't want to get into like the Evangeline Lilly thing. She's her own issue, and that's fine. She does okay. And this new movie coming out very soon does nothing to inspire hope in me that this is going to get better. It just feels like we trapped that character in being this one thing, and this one thing sucks that she's not allowed to grow. Even if Hope Van Dyne was a fashion designer before she was the Wasp, I'd feel better. But no, she's just a strong girl with a bad haircut. It's weird. And then we cast Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet. Again, I'm the Janet Stan. Janet Van Dyne, that's what they call me. No, they don't. That was stupid. Whatever. And I'm like, Michelle Pfeiffer, great to play off of Michael Douglas. I like that. No poisonality whatsoever. Just reading lines. So worried about this new movie doing something terrible with Janet. I am not excited, and I'm not happy about it. So, any interpretation of the Wasp that could have had any character development or personality was stripped for those movies. That sucks. Now, could it get better, and could Evangeline Lilly be on an Avengers team officially? Make her an actual Avenger, not connected to Scott. Maybe. That'd be cool. But I don't think that's going to happen either, because hell if we get something good to happen. So that is like, I think, the main modern continuity staying power of what people see as the Wasp. They're like, oh, it's Evangeline Lilly and Michelle Pfeiffer, those two. And well, I like both of those names off paper. Again, Evangeline Lilly, some stuff we're not going to get into. You put them in a movie like this, it just doesn't work. And then you think about the other things people know about the Wasp. Well, she has appeared in some cartoons, and I guess people have acknowledgement for her, and that's good. But the larger cultural perception has just kind of been Hank and Janet are the older generation. We have to focus on Scott for the modern generation, and then for the Wasp, it's like Nadia and Cassie in an essence, which kind of sucks. But I don't know, it's weird. So that's the main perception of the character. Again, she has appeared in some cartoons. The Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes cartoon, which is another video I did an entire retrospective on, talking about that. In my opinion, and I'm going to restate it here, I've done a whole video talking about that show. I'll restate it here. The Avengers Earth's Mightiest Hero cartoon is the best modern depiction of both Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym. It deals with Hank's depression and insecurities and the bubbly energy that Janet possesses while still having her be afraid for her partner and afraid of the situations around her. It's the perfect interpretation of both of those characters in a modern setting. It tells the Yellow Jacket story perfectly. It tells the Janet story perfectly. That cartoon got it right. Nobody watched it for them because they're like, it's Hulk and Thor and Captain America, and it's like those cool characters, and Hawkeye was really good in that too. But those two had so much good story in that show, Janet in particular. That's how I'd want to write her. That is how you tell a Janet story. The thing about Janet in terms of the Marvel universe, without any context, is that she is a founding superhero. She is a fashion designer. She is the cool, sexy aunt that hosts the best dinner parties, who has the best alcohol, who you just want to hang out with because she's going to scold you if you do something stupid. If you date the wrong person, Janet's going to be like, why did you do that? But she's also like, okay, go do that. Have some fun. Live your life. Be free. But she's still a motherly figure for you. That is Janet's role in the Marvel Universe. And that is something that has hardly been explored ever with her character. Because when she is first introduced, her first appearance in Tales to Astonish, it's because her father is attacked by an alien and she calls Ant-Man in to come help. And Ant-Man defeats the alien, and she's like, I want to avenge my father, but I'm going to be a good girl about it and become the Wasp. So she's already an accessory to Hank, which sucks. And do they have like a weird age thing? I don't really know if it was like remember like classic Reed and Sue, where Sue was like a grad student and he was like a professor age, that kind of like weird, Indian Marion relationship. I don't know if there was that big of a difference between Hank and Janet, but it's noticeable. It's very strange, and I don't really like that introduction. But again, it was the 60s. Stan Lee, I guess I said it, Stan Lee doesn't really know how to write women in that era. But then aside from that, she does some solo adventure-ing, some sort of solo Avengers-ing, just doing her own thing in like Tales to Astonish, and not really anything else. But then it's like, okay, what are we going to do with her? Well, I guess she could become an Avenger because her book's not selling, so we'll stick her on the Avengers, and then that's where she's going to go. And you're like, yep, that works for me. You don't really need to do anything else that much. So she becomes an Avenger, and we're just like, okay. And she comes up with the name of the Avengers. She's on the original team. We're all happy for it. We all love it to death. That's good stuff, right? Kinda, right? She becomes an Avenger. It's fine. And then it's like she's the girl on the team, so she's either like the first to get knocked out, can't really do anything to help the men. Just this terribly written character, and she gets no agency. And the thing is, I get what it is. I know what he was doing. I know why it was like that. Because boys were children and writing stupid costume shit. It's whatever. It's so annoying. So she doesn't have like the cultural staying power. I get it. I get it. Like, I understand how that happened and why it happened. It's just sucky that she never really got out of that bubble, and she still hasn't. So we're going to talk about a few things here, but I just want to note that, like, when we're looking at stories throughout the continuity of Marvel history, the big events, the big moments for each character, I will dare you to find the significant moment for Janet Van Dyne that doesn't involve her husband or a man manipulating her body in some way. There aren't really any. She is terribly connected to some terrible moments that she can't escape, that she can never escape, and it sucks. And it's just like, why are we still talking about this? Why are these things the main characteristic of her to this day? The things I am talking about, of course. When Jocasta gets her brain implanted from her, which I'm like, okay, that's fine enough because of the shit with the Vision and the Wonder Man stuff. It's like, okay, I get it. Janet's awesome. Ultron is an offspring of Hank's mind. That makes sense. I understand why that happened. But then, the other biggest thing people know her for is the hit from Hank. And it's like, what are we doing? I understand. Okay. I'm so stressed out about talking about this scene in particular because I have a bunch of thoughts on it. First thing I want to say, it looks like she gets fucking wailed by this guy, which I know the artist's intention was supposed to be this like a quiet backhand, but it's a violent hit. Second off, there is something to making this her defining characteristic where she becomes a victim of abuse from Hank. Now, Hank hasn't really acted like that till he became Yellow Jacket and his personality split. That's its own kind of issue. But no writer really gets her to escape from this. You know, even today's writers trying to tell her story, the bad ones come back to this being her defining thing. Even Hank's defining thing. And I'm like, he has moved past it. She shouldn't be connected to this. And it kind of sucks for that reason. Now, I also think Hank and Janet work better as a divorced couple. There is something about those storylines that shows the growth for both of them. They were bad for each other. She liked him for the wrong reasons, and he used her for the wrong reasons. When they're not together, Janet gets the opportunity to grow as a character. Hank gets the opportunity to grow as a character. So just alluding to that moment, I know why we're doing it. I don't think we need to do it as much. Just dwelling on it for the wrong reasons. You can dwell on it for the right reasons. If that becomes the defining moment for Janet where she becomes somebody new, then yeah, you can do that and have that matter. But the problem is, no writer has really had her escape that moment in a meaningful way. And it's very strange. And you have to ask yourself, why are we doing that? I don't know. It's so bizarre. I really hate that moment. And the other kind of like defining moment for Wasp, of course, this is not the like Earth 616 Wasp, but she gets eaten by the Blob in like the Ultimatum stuff. And that's like, okay, so even in another universe, she can't escape the bullshit. And that one's a weirder Hank story and blah, blah, blah. It's not that interesting. So those are the things that kind of like define her for everyone going forward, is that she is just connected to Hank being a terrible guy. She is an Avenger who doesn't get her own story, really. She is just there. And the thing is, like, there's so many Marvel characters that are just there. But Janet is a defining one. She is the female Avenger. She is the one from the beginning who says, we should do this. It becomes her thing. And then it's always just like every character is written to like her because she's nice and sweet. And somehow that's not enough. We have to put her through hell, put her through the ringer. She can never escape that feeling. It really sucks. And even then, that's the defining moment for her at that point. She doesn't really get any other major moment. She just becomes like a character who shows up sometimes and doesn't do anything. And I'm like, what are we doing? We can have all these characters come back, but she just like is sometimes on a team, sometimes isn't. it moves away. And you know why? It also moves away because the Avengers in the movies don't have her on it. So she doesn't become in popular favor again for that reason. And then she's not really on the Avengers teams anymore. She's like an ex-member who shows up sometimes for certain things. And there are some writers, I will say, there are some writers who get it right. I would say the two that come to mind for me right away are Kurt Busiek, who is, I would argue, my favorite comic book writer of all time, who wrote my favorite Avengers story of all time, Avengers Forever, where Janet leads that team. Janet gets to lead the team in Avengers Forever because she's the only one taking this shit seriously. And even her shitty husbands, there's just 2 Hank Pyms in this book, they listen to her. And I'm like, yeah, that's how you do it. That is how you tell a Janet story. If she's, okay, one of my staple things I always say that an Avengers comic book needs, it needs the Vision, it needs an Iron Man character, and it needs an Ant-Man or the Wasp. And when none of those are present on the team, it hinders itself well. Janet should be a T'Challa level, Carol Danvers level character where the iteration revolves around her being the central figure on the team. But no, we denigrate her to the sidelines for some reason. Why? Is it because her powers aren't interesting visually? They are, which we'll get back to in a minute here. I find it so bizarre. So Kurt Busiek is one of my favorite writers to take on the Wasp. Another one I will say, is it Jim Zub? I believe it's Jim Zub, who did the Black Panther and the Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda book, which sees Wasp as a field agent on the team. And I'm like, that's cool, because she's working through her issues. She's learning to deal with her problems. And that's what I like about this. When we're in a modern story and we let Janet both move on from her troubles and move on from the bullshit she's a part of, because there is also something to be said about her being in the era of terrible leading men. And this is a thing I'd say about Sue all the time. She is from the era where Reed was written as the worst. Well, so was Janet, but Janet had Bruce Banner, Hank Pym, and Tony Stark, 3 of the biggest egos in the Marvel Universe. And she had to put up with those men on a team. And she dated 2 of them. She dated Tony. And you're like, oh, that sucks and kind of gross. And it does suck, and it is gross. And something I've always said about the Janet Van Dyne character that I want to say again here, she should be dating somebody at all times. There are certain characters in the Marvel Universe that I think should constantly be dating maybe one type of character or a different type of character. Johnny Storm is one of them. Clint Barton is one of them, because those guys are down their luck making bad choices. And I think Janet Van Dyne should be caught up in this web of dating the wrong man or dating someone who's bettering herself for it. I like that. Putting her with Hank was bad. They're divorced. She's moving on. Tony is a worse choice. She thinks she can save Tony. She can't save him. She doesn't try to anymore. So she uses herself to better herself. And I'm like, that is what we should be doing here. That is what we should try to be doing. Why aren't we trying to do that? I don't understand. I don't understand. Something I've always said, this is my, okay, I'll say it here because the chances are if I ever get to write an Avengers comic book, it's going to be canceled right away. My pitch has always been that Janet should date the opposite energy of Hank and Tony. Who in the Marvel universe has the opposite energy of Tony and Hank? That's right. It's Danny Rand, a billionaire in himself, but he uses chi and he is zen and he is calm and he's not about technology or gadgets. He's a guy who's going to go do yoga and go to therapy. And that's what we should see. That is what we should see Janet be with. So if I ever got to write the Avengers, one of the things I would make the pinnacle, like the focal point of my story is Janet and Danny learning to see they like each other, and that becomes a connection. I just think, because look, there's nothing wrong with having a female character. I say this as a man, of course. There's nothing wrong with having a female character be in a relationship with men that aren't good for her, but there's also something like have her be in a relationship with someone that's good for her. You're allowed to write these characters as being happy and healthy and in relationships. And Janet, she's fun. She's lighthearted. She should constantly be having a good time with people. And a part of that is being in a relationship. You want her to be the single crazy party aunt? Yes, you can do that. The new Al Ewing book, she opens up what is it called? Is it Janet's? Or it's going to be like a superhero bar. And you're like, that's a fun idea. She can still date dudes, still date around, have some fun. That's okay. But nobody wants to do that. Everybody is afraid to let her grow because, of course, comic books are stuck in this perpetual state of shit that nobody can really move on from it, from the places they've been, and that kind of sucks. But it's like, we could try. We could at least attempt to make her grow. We could try it. Wouldn't be hard. She's come a long way, but not far enough. And that's just a shame. You know, that is just a shame and a shitty place that we're trapped in. But eventually, we will get out of it. I hope so, at least. I think we're going to see a new revelation in terms of just like Marvel creators using these old school characters in better ways. We've seen it with Susan Storm recently. I think Janet is her time is due. It might be Ewing's book. Ewing's book is incredible, has done wonders for the character. I'm blown away with how she's been treated because nobody has really wanted to escalate it. Be like, no, we should have her do her own thing, lead her own team. She's clearly capable of doing so. Why not try? Some writers do it. Kurt Busiek, for example. But sometimes she just gets stuck in the minutia of just always being connected to Hank at his worst and being a little too old for the generation. And maybe because we have so many legacies, she just gets lost in the shuffle. But she shouldn't. There should literally be a Janet Van Dyne push. She should become a central character of this universe, of this team, of everything. I haven't even talked about the most important aspect of her character, which is the thing that you could use to connect her to the entire superhero community at large. She's a fucking fashion designer. Do you know how cool that would translate to a comic book? A comic book about this woman in the superhero community who designs their costumes, and it doesn't even have to be their costumes. Maybe that's the side gig. She's an actual fashion designer. Do you know how cool it would be to have the Devils Wear Prada, to have the Cruella de Vil movie of comic books with Janet? I have pitched so many times in the very first episode of the GeekWave. I said a animated series where it's Janet Van Dyne running a fashion empire for the superhero community, guest stars galore, getting updates to their costumes. I think that is such a cool idea. And so strong. And that's the other thing when it comes to Janet Van Dyne. Name another superhero with so many iconic costumes. Oh my God, does Janet have the best costumes out there? She's the best. She's the best at it. Even the ones in the movies I think are good. And her design emulating from like the classic look when she first appears with the weird headset, the weird points, to all of the modern stuff. There is not a comic book. I will stand by this statement. There is not a comic book character who has more iconic and versatile and interesting designs than Janet Van Dyne. Because she is a fashion designer, you are allowed to try new things with her and experiment with her wardrobe, and it looks so cool. It looks so cool. It is awesome. We're so happy for it. I want more stuff like this. It's cool. Come on. How sick is it? So, I guess I could talk about some of my favorite costumes because a thing I don't talk about a lot on this channel is I actually do like fashion a bit. I've always been fascinated by it. I've always said if I went down a different career path, I maybe would have went down like design in that aspect. So there are so many cool costumes she has. I'm not going to list them all. I do like the original. There's something so cool about like that vintage headpiece. I just think it's so iconic and creative and fun. It's so unique in my opinion. It makes for some really fun stuff. I really like, maybe because I grew up with the Marvel Legends stuff, I like that blue costume that she doesn't technically wear. That's got like the arrows pointed down to her knees. I think that one looks good. So cool and fun. I do like the pixie cut when she has that. It definitely works for her. One of the few characters in this universe where I'm like, yep, the shorter hair works better for her. I love the green kind of like disco-y skirt costume. It's hard to explain how much I love that one, but it's just like, look at that. It's so stylistic and so unique to her. I understand why in modern context she is wearing like the yellow and black because it's more like, a Wasp. But if she is a woman of fashion and we know her to be one, she should have really iconic costumes in different colors. I like when she uses pink. I think the green disco one is one of my favorites. I loved the pop collar, like really bright blue one. Such a cool, like that one. I love good blue on a costume. You could tell by Tsunami himself is all blue. I love the blue and white of that costume with that hair. I like when she has like a popped collar too, when it's like kind of a different collar than the one that Hank would have with like the yellow jacket like stuff. When it's the popped collar, I think it looks really cool. She has a couple of those designs. Even like her weird like monster design, I don't think is bad. I like the modern stuff. I think it gets a little like lost in the shuffle of just all the bullshit she has to go through. It's just like, okay, I think you like nailed it with like the slick black one with like the design of like the Wasp face like on her chest. Adding more shit to that I don't think works. It should be simple. And I know we have to change it because we can't do too vintage, but I don't know. There's something special about some of those classic Wasp costumes. I think we should do more with them. And we don't. We just don't. She's a fashion designer. Why is nobody telling that story? There's something there. There is something to say there. I can't be the only one who thinks there is something to say about her defining characteristic being she's a fashion designer hasn't been explored enough. Why hasn't it? There's something to say about that. There is something you could say about that, and why hasn't it been said? I need to know the answer. Why hasn't it been said? Why is nobody trying? Can we just stop this, please? Stop this charade? Let her grow? Let her do some new stuff? I hope I'm doing justice to Janet here because I get so passionate about this character because there is so much you could explore that nobody tries to. And I know there's like a huge list of characters you could do this entire video about. I could sit here and say it about Clint and Bobby's relationship. I could sit here and say it about the Black Knight probably. But the thing with Janet is she is one of the original ones. She is there from the beginning. And we have seen multiple iterations of other characters developed and changed and done more stuff. Why hasn't the current crop grown to let her become a mainstay? Is it because editorial's like, no, it has to be Nadia? It's not really, because Nadia doesn't do much anyways. I don't know. It's literally just, it's been on my mind for so long. And as we get closer to the release of this new movie, I just feel like I have to talk about it. I have to talk about this character because she has meant so much to me. I think it's for a multitude of reasons. It's just, she is the fashion designer, which is something I've always been fascinated by. The multiple costumes just work. I love the concept of this person who can shrink down like a fly and has wings and does all that crazy stuff. I love the alternative types of leads where everyone is just pining for, your Mary Jane Watsons and your Jean Greys, and those are everyone's favorites. But I'm like, Janet was there from the beginning. She is the motherly figure of the Marvel Universe. She cares about the younger generation more than a lot of people do. There's something there. She can overcome the adversity if we let her grow, if we let her try to. But we don't. We never really let her try. She has recent appearances in the new Darkhold miniseries that wasn't that interesting. And before that, her last big thing was The Agents of Wakanda, which is a really underrated book in my opinion. She did have some Pimtron stuff happen where she was connected to that, but it's like, whatever, it's kind of lame. Besides those things in the past maybe 10 years, nothing happened with her. Nothing has happened with her. It's a shame. It's embarrassing. Why are we doing this, Marvel? Janet deserves better. She's always deserved better. Every part of her character is a leader. She is a staple of the Avengers. She should be a staple of the Avengers. She is connected to the entire Marvel Universe. All you have to do is have one scene in an issue that has nothing to do with the Avengers or Janet Van Dyne, where somebody calls Janet up and they say, hey, can you help me design a new costume? Whether it's the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, fucking Iron Fist, like I've been saying, any of them. And you have her more important in the universe. And sure, people have tried, but you should really stick to it. Make it matter. Make it important. Don't reference it. Have it be the defining characteristic. Now, the new Al Ewing book, which I absolutely adore, she is opening up a bar. We have one issue out at the time of this video being released. I hope to see it succeed. I hope to see that become a more mainstay for her. You know, maybe she becomes this like the fun. I'm trying to think of like a good analogy for her character. Maybe she's going to become like the Michael Sheen from Tron Legacy character for the Marvel Universe now. Or just like, hey, you want a safe place to hang out if you're a superhero? Well, you can come here. I don't know. She respects the law and she respects authority. She's a good character. Let her be a good character, please. 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 I'm begging you. Don't give in to the movie's hypocrisy. They're terrible interpretations of the Van Dyne legacy. She's important and impactful. And hell, if Stan Lee can create her in a weird era, we can make her change from that era like we have every other character. She will not be defined by the slap from Hank. We will write stories about her growing and triumphing from that moment. We just got to let her try. So Marvel, if you need somebody to write the character, I am clearly a passionate fan who wants to do more with her. Please let me try. Let's do it. She should have a new costume every week is all I'm saying. All I'm saying. Oh, Janet. Well, I love you. I have so many more thoughts I could get into, and we could talk about individual issues that don't really matter. Maybe I didn't spend too much time on Jocasta, but the thing is, they just happen and we move on, and then we just don't do anything with her. She's sidelined. It sucks. She's a defining moment. She's a defining character. Let her be defined. Let her matter. We could do fucking Scarlet Witch books now. Why can't we do one of the Wasp that's more than 4 issues, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm losing it. I'm not. I love this character too much to be losing it. So, let's end things with a couple of Wasp recommendations for you folks, which is hard to do because a lot of the stories ain't too good. Here's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you Avengers Forever, which is one of my favorite comic books of all time. Definitely worth checking out. I'm going to give you The Unstoppable Wasp. Is that the name of the... Yeah, The Unstoppable Wasp. That's the Nadia Pym book, which is really fun. I'm going to give you Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That's a really good one to read and definitely worth checking out. Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda is a really good read. And if you want a little more context on this character, my video for The Wasp issue 1 from this month, that's a fun video and worth checking out with the character. I will also say you can listen to all my other videos because surprisingly, not surprising I should say, the Wasp is a character I've talked immensely about on this channel. So you can do that. You can check out anything I have ever said on the Wasp. The first episode of the GeekWave is about her. And this one is too. This is the Janet Van Dyne episode. Will it be the last? Good question. Probably not. She will be appearing, or I'll be talking about her more and more in whatever it comes up. But just an entire episode about Janet. She matters. She's important. She's cool. And please, let me know your favorite Janet Van Dyne costume. Until then, thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating over there. It definitely helps out. You can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Hive. And I will catch you in the next one when we talk about Susan. Nah, we're not going to do... Maybe we'll do Sue. I'd rather do Mockingbird, honestly. Another character in the same vein. But have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.